These are our notes on similarity theorems. Our first similarity theorem is the angle-angle theorem, which states if two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of another triangle, then we say they are similar. So if we look down here, we can see we have a similarity statement. ABC is similar to GJH. And we can see here we have angle-angle that is congruent with this angle-angle. So again, if two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of another, they are similar. So these would be similar. With these examples, it's asking, are the following triangles similar? And we have to explain why. So I'm going to pause the video. You go ahead and take a look at these two and see what you think for that. So hopefully you found for your answer for this first example, these two triangles are not similar because they do not have two angles that are congruent. So two angles are not congruent. So therefore, these two are not similar. Looking at this example 2, hopefully you could see that we had one triangle within this bigger triangle, and these two angles would be congruent as with these two. So this would be the angle-angle theorem, and yes, these would be similar triangles. Our next theorem is the side-angle-side theorem, which states that if an angle of one triangle is congruent to the angle of another, and the sides including that angle are proportional, then those triangles would be similar. So we can see here these two triangles share this angle that is congruent, and the sides including that angle are also proportional, which we checked out over here. So if you take 5/15, that would be 0.333 we could stop at, equals, same thing here, would be 0.333. So we know that they're proportional and they have that shared congruent angle. So these two would be similar based on the side-angle-side theorem. Our next theorem is the side-side-side theorem, which states that if corresponding sides of two triangles are proportional, then those triangles are considered similar. So when we look at this one, we can see down here, it's already set up for us, 3/6 would be equal to 6/12, would be equal to 3.5/7, and we know that each of those would reduce down to 1/2 or 0.5. So if you had 0.5 equals 0.5 equals 0.5, we know that all of those sides, the corresponding sides, are proportional. So these two would be similar based on the side-side-side theorem. In this example, we can see that based on what we have here, you may be tempted to say these two angles would be similar based on the side-angle-side theorem. However, even though 6/12 and 2/4 would give you a half for each of those corresponding sides, you would have a half, but based on where the angle is located, remember that this angle, this congruent angle, has to be located between the two corresponding sides. So for this to be side-angle-side, the angle would technically have to be here and here, which it is not. So this one could not be considered side-angle-side. In this next example, we have to determine if these two triangles are similar. So we can see here we've got all three of our sides. So we have to determine if these corresponding sides would actually be similar. So we have to set them up to try to solve for that. So I would just take 3/5. 3/5 equals 3/5 equals 3 square roots of 2 over 5 square roots of 2. And when we do that, we could reduce these down to 0.6 if we wanted to. But for this last one, even though it looks like it's more complicated, we could just cross off those 2 square roots of 2, and we still have 0.6 or 3/5. So we would say for this, yes, these two triangles are similar based on the side, side, side theorem. Okay, on this next example, it asks us to state why these triangles are similar. So these triangles here, you've got one big one and one smaller one. We also need to write a similarity statement, and we want to try to find our missing values. You can see here we have an x down here that we want to solve for that variable, and we also have a y here for this angle, so we want to see if we can solve for that variable as well. So I'm going to pause the video, and you go ahead and see what you can set up, and then we'll compare our answers. So for the first question, state why these triangles are similar, we would have to state one of the theorems if it applied, and in this case we do have the side angle side theorem. Okay, so we can see that we have corresponding sides, and I could have filled those in too, so I can do that right now. This right here would be your F1, or Fi, sorry, which would be 10. And then over here for your Fj, that whole entire side would be 7.5. So we know that this side and this angle and then this side we could use, okay, because we've got these two angles correspond. So therefore we've got side angle side, and so that's the theorem that we would use for this. This is the second question, write a similarity statement. So for that, I put triangle FJI is similar to triangle FHG. So here's FJI would be the bigger of the two triangles, and then FHG would be the smaller. Okay, so those were the two similar triangles. And then to actually solve for your variables, for the first one here, we had the 4x plus 7, so I said 6 over 4x plus 7, and then I used my 4 over the 10, which would be the whole side. And when we solve for that, you should get x equals 2. There's other ways that you could have set that up, but you should have found also that your x variable is equal to 2. And then for our y here, for this angle, we know that these two angles are congruent, and so I just took my 5y minus 35 and set it equal to 70, and when you solve for that, you should have found that y equals 21. Hopefully you got the same answers as me, and if not, I'm going to pause the video right now and we can go over any questions that you might have. Okay, this is our last example problem. This one is asking us to state why these triangles are similar again, so again we're going to write a similarity theorem for this, if one applies. The next question, write a similarity statement. So we want to write a similarity statement for these two triangles. And then the last question, find the missing values. And you can see here we have a y variable that's missing, as well as we have an x here that's missing. So we want to solve for that as well. So I'm going to pause the video here. Go ahead and test it out, see what you can come up with for these. Start with number 1 and work your way down, and then we'll compare our answers. So for this last example, the first thing I did was marked the angles that I knew were congruent. So that would be these two vertical angles, these two angles, and then these two angles. And the theorem, how we could state that these triangles are similar, is by the angle-angle theorem. Our similarity statement is triangle ABC would be similar to triangle EDC. Okay, so make sure you check your similarity statement. And then to find our missing values, we knew we had this y variable as well as this x variable. So for the y, Right over here you can see my work. I took 2y plus 2 and put that over top of this corresponding side, which was 4, equals 6 over 3. You could have set yours up a little differently, but that's how I set mine up. And you should have gotten, right here is the work, you should have ended up getting that y equals 3. And for our second variable, the x here, I took x and put it over this 5, this corresponding side, and set that equal to 3 over this 6. And when we solve for that, we find that x equals 2.5. Hopefully you got the same answers for yours. And if not, then you can ask any questions at this time.